In my last video, I talked about why stories are important, why we need to tell stories in conversations. And somebody asked a question. Guess what the question is? What if I don't have a story to tell? That is BS. We all have stories to tell. Even if you're locked up in a cage, you have a story to tell. At least you can talk about how you broke your fingers trying to get out of the cage. If you're alive and if you're breathing, you have a lot of stories to tell. And so in this video, what I'm going to do, I'm going to teach you how to go back into your past and mine your stories, just like we mine gold, silver, and other natural elements from the earth. You can also go back to your past, go back to your history, go back to as close as yesterday, and mine your stories. And so you can use those stories in your conversations and when you're giving advice to people. Stay tuned. Stories are powerful. They're very powerful. Most of the deepest and most meaningful conversations have stories in them. Today, I'm going to share with you 4 things that you can do to mine the stories in your life, to bring out the stories that you have in your life, to make them useful, to bring them to the surface. And the first thing that you have to do is think about the people around you. Think about your family, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers, and whatever you, everybody that you have around you, the people that you've met. People, think about people. Think about the time you went out with your brother and you got in a fight, for example, or when you went out with your mom to a grocery store and the cashier did something stupid. You know, those are stories that you can use. And that is one rich source that you can draw out stories from, that you can get a lot of stories from, experiences with people. The second thing that you can do to mine your stories is to think about the objects around you. You have experiences with objects. For example, I had an experience with a knife. While I was growing up, I caught myself with a knife on the same spot, here, right here, twice. I was doing the same thing, trying to cut sugar cane, and I caught myself on the same spot twice, 2 different times with the same knife. That's an example, that's a story, and it's an example of what happens when you don't learn from your mistakes. You know, that's a story around an object. The third thing that you can do to mine your stories are places. Think about the places you've been to. Think about it could be your workplace, it could be vacation, it could be your church, it could be anywhere, any place. What are your experiences in those places? What are your experiences at work? What are your experiences at different travel destinations? For example, I was traveling with my wife to Miami and we are at the airport, and one of the pilots walks up to myself and my wife and gave us a bunch of tickets to get drinks in the plane, to buy drinks in the plane. And it was a surreal, like a surprising event for us. And throughout the flight, we had drinks and all of that. That is an experience in a place. There are several places that you can think about that you've had different kinds of experiences. All you need to do is think about those places and bring out those stories. So the fourth thing that you can do to mine your stories is to think in years, age, or time. So you can think about 2015, for example. Think about what happened in 2015 in your life that you think is good enough as a story, that you can write out, that you can bring out and make a story. And you can also think in years. Okay, when I was 25, what happened? You know, this is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit more tasking on your memory, but you can go back and think. You can think about 2020, for example. That is easy. We all know what happened in 2020. That is how to, mine your stories in years, in age, or in time. So those are the 4 things that you can do to mine your stories: people, objects, places, and years, or time, or age. And here's the difficult part. It's okay to think about all of these things, to bring out all these stories in your mind, but it is not going to do you any good if you just think about them. The hard part, the difficult part, is you have to write it out. You have to write out the stories so you have a material that you can look at, that you can remember. It's something that you have to do. You have to write it out, write out your stories and make it visible. And so when you have it as a material, it is easy to go through. It's easy to rehearse, to look at, to learn, to remember. You know, it's easy. And you can use any of the stories in any situations as appropriate, as needed. You know, so you have to write it down and make it useful. Make it a good material for you in your conversations and when you're giving advice to people. And so there you have it. Our next video is going to be on refining your stories. Refining your stories. It's one thing to mine out all the stories. It is another thing to refine your stories. So when you're telling the stories, you're not blabbing, you're not jumping around or all confused. You're telling it in a way that holds the attention of your audience. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do subscribe. Until next time, stay connected.